At the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow, Torrie Lewis just broke a barrier no Australian woman has ever broken. Then 2 nights later, she lined up for the 200-meter final, and the woman who beat her had just come back from a doping ban. Lewis's reaction after the race said it all. Here's exactly what happened. Let's start with the 100 meters, because this is the moment that changed everything. Lewis walked into the final at Scotstoun Stadium already carrying the fastest qualifying time, after running 11 seconds flat in her semi-final. That alone had shaved 0.04 of a second off her own national record, set only a week earlier. Conditions on the night were wet and cold, not the kind of weather made for fast times. But Lewis didn't slow down. She crossed the line in 10.99 seconds. No Australian woman had ever run under 11 seconds in the 100 meters. Not one in the entire history of the sport. Lewis became the first. She finished third, taking bronze behind New Zealand's Zoe Hobbs, who ran an Oceania record of 10.93, and England's Amy Hunt, who edged her out for silver in 10.98. It was Australia's first medal in this event at the Commonwealth Games since 1998, when Tanya Van Heer also won bronze. But nobody was talking about the medal color. They were talking about the number, 10.99. Lewis had broken her own national record twice in one session, first in the semi, then again in the final. To understand how fast that drop happened, look at the timeline. Lewis ran 11.10 seconds back in January 2024. In September 2025, she brought that down to 11.08. Then, in the space of a single week leading into Glasgow, she ran 11.4 in Slovakia, 11.00 in her Commonwealth Games semi-final, and finally 10.99 in the final. 3 national records in 7 days. That kind of jump almost never happens at this level, especially not on the biggest stage of an athlete's career. Commentator Bruce McAvaney summed it up perfectly on air, saying, quote, "It's all your Christmases coming at once in so many ways." Back in the studio, host Matt White added that she'd had the night of her life. Lewis herself kept it simple. "Thank God," she said when asked about breaking the barrier. Then she explained the pressure she'd been carrying. Quote, "I was so nervous after my semi being the fastest qualifier. Hey, perfect race for me. I'll get better in the next few years." That's a 21-year-old talking about a night that just made history, and still saying she has room to improve. Now, here's where the story gets complicated. 2 nights later, Lewis was back for the 200 meters, an event some people think suits her even better than the 100 meters. She'd run a personal best of 22.56 seconds the year before, so the talent was already there. She looked ready in the rounds too. In her semi-final, she won her heat in 22.64 seconds, edging Jamaica's Alana Reid in a photo finish. The final was stacked. Adaejah Hodge from the British Virgin Islands had run the fastest time of anyone in the field during the semis, clocking 22:01. Trinidad and Tobago's Shaniqua Bascombe was through too, along with Jamaica's Alana Reid. England's Success Ejuan and Singapore's Veronica Shanti Pereira rounded out the field, with Pereira making history just by qualifying, becoming the first Singaporean sprinter ever to reach an individual Commonwealth Games final. When the gun went off, Hodge was in a different gear entirely. She pulled away from the field and won gold in 22.07 seconds. Bascombe and Reid took silver and bronze. Lewis had a tough night, finishing 6th in 22.88, well off the pace she'd shown just 2 days before. But the real story wasn't the result. It was who won. Adaejah Hodge had tested positive for a banned substance back in 2024 at the World Under-20 Championships in Peru. That's the same event where Hodge had originally beaten Lewis for the 200-meter title. The banned substance was called GW50151 Stix, a metabolic modulator. Hodge was hit with a 2-year ban. Her results from that meet were erased, and Lewis was bumped up from silver to gold in that race as a result. Hodge cooperated with anti-doping investigators, and her ban was reduced to 17 months. She returned to competition in January. Investigators ruled that her use of the substance was unknowing and unintentional, but it meant Hodge walked onto the Glasgow track, competing for Commonwealth gold less than a year after serving a doping suspension, and she won it. Reporters asked Lewis directly what she thought about Hodge's victory. Her answer was careful but pointed. She said she'd been told not to say anything about it, When asked who told her that, she wouldn't say. Then she added this, quote, "I think everyone knows what I would like to say, but yeah, just fill in the blank yourself. That's about as clear as an athlete can get without breaking any rules." Lewis didn't accuse anyone of anything directly. She didn't have to. Her frustration came through anyway. She'd just broken a national barrier 2 nights earlier, then watched someone with a recent doping history take the gold medal she'd worked years for. It's worth saying, Hodge served her punishment. She followed every step the rules required. Nothing about her return broke any regulation. But for an athlete like Lewis, who's grinding through injuries and doing things the long way, it's easy to understand why that moment stung. So who is Torrie Lewis? And how did she get here? She started her athletics career in Newcastle before her family moved to Queensland. And she wasn't always the biggest name in Australian sprinting. At just 15, she was already ranked as the world's best under-16 runner in both the 100-meter and 200 meters. At 16, she equaled the national under-18 100 meters record that had been held by Sally Pearson, Australia's Olympic hurdles champion. People started comparing the two of them, which is a lot of pressure for a teenager still in school. Her coach at the time said Lewis had the same fierce competitive streak as Pearson, and that in his 30 years in the sport, he'd never seen a junior athlete work as hard off the track as she did. In April 2023, at just 18 years old, Lewis won both the 100-meter and 200-meter national titles in the same championships. Then, in January 2024, she ran 11.20 seconds to become Australia's fastest woman ever at that point, taking the record from Melissa Breen, who had held it since 2014. Then came the moment that really put her on the map. At a Diamond League meet in China, running out of lane 9, the worst lane on the track, Lewis beat Sha'Carri Richardson, the reigning world 100-meter champion, in the 200 meters. Nobody expected that. Lewis said, afterward, she didn't even realize she'd won until she watched the replay back. Quote, "Holy crap, so surreal," she said. She admitted her plan had simply been to hang on for as long as possible, since she expected the rest of the field to blow past her from the outside lane. Heading into Glasgow, Lewis had dealt with an Achilles injury that forced her to skip a race in Switzerland. Just a week before the Games, she ran a personal best of 11.04 seconds in Slovakia, then doubled back the same night to win the 200 meters in 22.66. 2 races, back-to-back on the same night. That's not something most sprinters attempt so close to a major championship. She wanted to know how her body would hold up during a tough week of racing. It held up just fine. She even opened her Glasgow campaign with a heat win, telling Seven's Jason Richardson afterward that the run helped her settle into the track, the crowd, and the conditions before the pressure really started to build.